Happy New Year, and thank you for once again joining us here on Catching Up with Jacob. And we have Jacob Prash. How are you doing, Jacob?
Blessings in Jesus. Wonderful to be with you all. Coming to you from the buckle of the Bible Belt here in the western outer suburbs of Nashville, Tennessee. New Year
I was
blessings to
always
all.
I was always
New
told
Year.
that Texas was the buckle of the Bible Belt, but
All right.
okay,
Well,
I'll accept Tennessee.
okay.
Uh, Davey, how are you doing, my brother? How's the weather down under?
Yeah, we're actually getting a taste of summer, although we're getting a mix of seasons. But yeah, it's mostly on the warmer side at the moment. So yeah, we're getting summer.
Uh, Praise God. And finally, from the Holy Land, how you doing, Elon?
I'm very well, thank you, Jay. Greetings from Western Galilee, and blessings and Happy New Year to all.
It's wonderful to see all of you. I'm so glad you're here today. Wanted to talk a little bit about why this time is different. We want to thank all of you who have already watched the film. However, we wanted to also let you know there's new ways that you can definitely receive and watch the film other than Vimeo. Obviously, we have YouTube now. If you want to watch the film, send your donation to moriel.org, giving the Film and Television Fund. And Mia will send me an email, and we will email a private link out to you that you can watch the film on YouTube. Second, if you want a physical copy right now, we've also started to sell USBs with the movie. So if you want to have a copy to give to someone else, please go again to moriel.org, go to the web store, and you will see why this time is different. And we will send out a USB. I will be working very soon with Moriel UK so that they have the ability to make versions on USB in the UK as well. So many different options. Please support us. We definitely have other projects that are all ready to go. We just need to kind of get the budget in order to be able to produce some of these other great films that we have in mind. We want to thank you for all of you that have supported us already. And with that, Jacob, do you have any upcoming speaking engagements? I know you're coming here soon.
Coming to the Los Angeles area, I shall be speaking at the Christian Church of Devore, and I shall be speaking in Chatsworth at a new church affiliating to Moriel. We'll have those dates up on the Moriel website itinerary page very soon. In May, I'm also scheduled to be speaking in Winnipeg, Canada. That'll be a May date, and that'll be announced soon as well. I will also be coming to Great Britain, but the speaking engagements are in a very early planning stage at the present moment. I don't even know the dates I'll be able to arrive in Great Britain yet. We're working on that at the moment. But here we are. We shall see you in Winnipeg. My first time in Canada since COVID. I haven't been in Canada since COVID, before COVID. And of course, within the next few weeks, we shall be in the Los Angeles area, in San Bernardino, Devore, and then we shall be up in the San Fernando Valley, just north of LA, coming up in the next less than 2 weeks.
Are they gonna let you out of Canada once you get there, Jacob?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, good question.
I'd be a little bit. Well, never
I'm
mind.
not sure if Barney would want to let me in. Yeah.
There's yet another difference. Davey, can you talk a little bit other than the USB for why this time is different? Talk about some of the other USBs that are now available on in not only Moriel Australia, but Moriel US and UK.
Yep. Currently, we have the quintessential Quintana, which has about 700, just over 700 of Marco's teachings. We have the Jumpstart with Jacob, which has got about 318 teachings of Jacob's from more recent years. And we have the whole Enchilada, which is a series of older teachings. All are available at present. Hopefully by about March or April, we'll have an update to Jacob's teachings and an update to Marco's teachings. If you order them, then we'll probably be able to put them all on the one. Like if you order Jacobs, we'll probably be able to give you an updated one with Jacobs rather than ordering the two. We've got to discuss that yet, but yeah, if you after them, simply go to, if you're in the UK, simply go to the Moriel UK store, which I think is morielministriesuk.org from memory. They are on the Moriel US site, and except for the quintessential Quintana isn't, but they do have it. So just simply email Mia or email the store or email me at Davy, Davy Rosengreen@gmail.com, and we'll be able to help you out there.
Yes.
Thank you so much, David. And with that, let's get caught up. Jacob, in the streets in Iran, we have many things boiling over. We have slogans, we have speeches, we have people who can't afford food. They don't trust the currency anymore, and they don't have water. This is an economic collapse that is really making Iran and their government real. The scarcity is no longer theoretical. It's a lived reality. Chronic mismanagement, drought, and bad infrastructure has left the entire regions of Iran facing water shortages. Jacob, why don't you fill us in on your take with what's going on in Iran, and then also President Trump weighing in as well?
I was in Israel in 1979 when the Shah fell. The Shah fell from power. It demonstrated the weakness, basically the lack of resolve and the incompetence of course, the Carter administration. Carter was seen by both the Soviets, as it was then, and by the radical Muslims of Iran as a very weak president, which he was. Inflation was out of control, pushing 20% in the United States. It was just absolutely horrific. Everything Jimmy Carter touched turned to garbage, apart from Camp David. That was his only success story. That was his legacy. Everything else he did was a disaster. And the Shah fell at that particular time. Most Iranians, however, did not know what they wanted. They just knew that they wanted to get rid of the Shah. Many Iranians did not even know who Ayatollah Khomeini was. The original plan was for Bani Sadr, an Iranian secularist, to assume power in lieu of the Shah when the Shah left the country and came to Egypt and then to the United States for medical treatment. In any event, Bani Sadr did not last. The Islamists backed the mullahs, deposed him, and the mullahs were supported strongly by the uneducated people of North Tehran, particularly, because the uneducated Muslims would follow the mullahs blindly. And the mullahs themselves, about 100,000 of them, were very uneducated. They just went by rhetoric, but people listened to them. Well, Ayatollah Khomeini, who'd been exiled in France, got power, and they automatically began a crackdown on Baha'is because they were seen as Israeli collaborators, and they were hated by the Shias because they believed the Bab, who was buried in Haifa, Israel, was the Mahdi. So they're hated by the Shias. Also, the crackdown on Zoroastrians, on Yazidis, on Iranian Christians, on anybody who was not a Shia fundamentalist. Tensions had already been there, going back to the Battle of Karbala in the early centuries of Islam with Sunnis and Shias. But now the Shias actually had a state controlled by the mullahs. The Shah was nominally Shia, but he was a secularist. Under the weakness of the Carter administration, the Shah fell. Now, the Shah may have been despotic, but he was a lot better than anything that happened since and after. Once the mullahs came to power under Ayatollah Khomeini and they grabbed the American hostages, again showing the ineptitude of the Carter administration with the failed hostage rescue, they became more and more entrenched. The failed hostage rescue by the Carter administration, it was badly planned from a military perspective, inadequate helicopters and so forth. It was just bad. But it was like what the Bay of Pigs was in Cuba. The Bay of Pigs cemented Castro's position, while the failed hostage rescue cemented Khomeini's position. Then something else happened. The war between Sunni Iraq and Shia Iran. The biggest war in terms of human death toll since the Second World War. 1.5 to 1.1 million Muslims killed by other Muslims in a jihad, proving the bogus claims of the Quran of Ummah, that Muslims are one nation and one people. They killed over 1.5 million of each other, including children sent in human wave attacks, including children sent in human wave attacks, being told that they were going to get their 70 virgins if they died in the jihad, et cetera, by the mullahs and by Khomeini. This resembled what St. Bernard did with the children's crusades in the Middle Ages during the Crusades. Same kind of thing was what the Catholic Church did, only an Islamic version of it. The suffering of the Iranian people and the massive death toll of children, it was unspeakable. Well, oil floated the Iranian economy. It was mismanaged. It was allowed to deteriorate in terms of its production capacity, but there was so much of it, it could still float the regime. When the Shah fell, it was, ironically, the uprising that took place in the bazaar, the strikes by the market in the bazaar. The bazaar in Tehran and in other cities like Isfahan and Qom and Tabriz, that was like the shopping centers, the shopping malls of Iran. It was the center of commerce. And once the bazaars, the merchants in the bazaars joined the uprising, that was the end of it. That was the end of it. The Pahlavi family were exiled. The Shah's son, who has lived in Washington, D.C., Connecticut, and California, was training to be a fighter pilot in Texas, not to fly American-manufactured aircraft. When the Shah fell from power, he never returned. Now we have people marching through the streets of Iranian cities asking Mr. Pahlavi to come back. Now, the Pahlavis claim to be the peacock throne. They claim to be the descendants of Cyrus the Great, traditionally allies and friends of the Jews. The Shah was friendly to Israel. He provided most of Israel's oil. The oil was coming into Eilat from Iranian ports, from Karg Island and so forth. There is now a quest among secularists in Iran to restore not only the Pahlavi dynasty, the peacock throne of Cyrus the Great, but to make friends with Israel and America and the West. You have a large secular diaspora of Iranians outside of Iran who hate the mullahs. They're in England, they're in Canada, they're in Australia, they're in America, and quite a contingent of Iranian Jews who obviously left, who are in Israel and the United States primarily. So this is an uprising. It is not the first uprising. It is about the fourth uprising, but it's the second major one. The first major one took place during the Obama administration, but Obama was pro-Iranian terror.
Famously, he did nothing. Yeah. He did absolutely nothing.
He did absolutely nothing except unfreeze the frozen capital assets of the terrorist regime while they were sponsoring terror and killing Americans, Obama and Biden, between them, released $300 billion into the hands of radical Islamic terrorists and other money, but they tried to do surreptitiously and covertly. This was Barack Obama, a wholesale betrayal of America by Obama and Biden and their cronies. The corruption was unbelievable. Mr. Trump is different. Mr. Trump took out Soleimani, the senior commander of the Revolutionary Guards, and Mr. Trump, of course, took out the nuclear weapons development facilities that was underground with B-2 bombers that the Israelis could not do, only the Americans could do and did do under Mr. Trump. And now Mr. Trump is warning again. He is the opposite of what Biden and Obama did. Notice the mainstream media who hate Mr. Trump are underreporting what has happened and underreporting the successes that are taking place. There is, again, absolutely no question that this was the subject, the chief subject on the agenda in the recent mini summit in Mar-a-Lago between Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Trump. What is going to happen? Can we displace the mullahs? But I was actually watching footage of Iranians burning Korans. Some of them are holding up facsimiles of Israeli and American flags. This is something. The danger here is the Mujahideen getting power. You have an uprising of communistic jihadists. You see this was what happened in Libya with Gaddafi. It happened to a degree with Nasser in Egypt. It happened with Assad in Syria. Then it went down after the Arab Spring, but now it is resurfacing again, such as with the election of Mamdani in New York. This combination of anti-Semitic radical Islam mixed with communism. It's even in New York. It's certainly in London with Khan. And now it is, of course, something that is a possibility to take place in Iran. So even if the mullahs are overthrown, what replaces them may not be any better, providing they can keep power. But to see these riots and to see the Iranian Revolutionary Guard being rendered impotent in the streets, there is a desperate effort by Khomeini, not Khomeini, but Khomeini, to keep power. He's fled to Iran. And the person he's put in charge is the same person who put down previous uprisings. Expect the possibility of a serious bloodbath. But even if the mullahs are deposed, we have to be careful that the Mujahideen do not get power again. Who are basically, again, they combine communism with radical Islam. This is something to be of some note. Whatever happens, however, we have to assess everything in light of the prophecies of Daniel chapter 10. We have to assess everything in light of the prophecies of Daniel chapter 10. Those prophecies must take place sooner or later. Even if there is a period of respite, we know what it will ultimately come to. There's a principality over Persia. But this is very, very interesting. Now, what is happening is it is being triggered in part by the hyperinflation taking place in Iran. There are millions and millions and millions of their currency to $1 US. The prices are changing 2 to 4 times a day in the bazaars. So the bazaars are closing. They can't do business with this kind of inflation. Another factor is the Iranian Revolutionary Guard was not just a paramilitary police force and a Shia Mutawa, religious police. It was something else. It was a mafia. It was a mafia. And these organized criminal elements took over control of many of the bureaucratic functions of government and business, and their mismanagement of the national water resources is what is responsible for this incredible drought. They are literally out of water almost, to the point where they're talking about needing to evacuate their capital, Tehran, and relocate it. 10 million people plus. So it is a synergistic effect of the inflation, of the uprising of the secularists, backed by Mr. Trump and Mr. Netanyahu, and additionally, this water crisis, all happening at once. It is a perfect storm. Very, very interesting.
Jacob, what does this have as far as ramifications outside of Iran? We know, what it's going to do for Israel, but are there any more geopolitical consequences to this meltdown in Iran?
Absolutely. They're already castrated capacity to support Hezbollah and Hamas is a fait accompli because of the Israeli actions in Lebanon and in Gaza, and also combined American and Israeli and British actions in Yemen against the Houthis. Having said that, Azerbaijan and Armenia have moved into an anti-Putin camp. They had been more friendly to Putin. Now they've become more inimical to Putin, creating a geographical bloc along the west coast of the Caspian Sea. So there is no landline, no roads or rail system that can directly connect Putin's Russia with Iran anymore. Now, why is this important? Because the bulk of Russian drones being fired at Ukraine are manufactured in Iran. Iran is the arch supplier of drone technology and armaments to Putin. Most of those drones are not made in Russia or coming from elsewhere. They're coming from Iran, particularly one particular model. The same model that they fired at Israel unsuccessfully. But they are supplying these things in large quantity to Mr. Putin, and they no longer can. It will affect the Ukraine because Mr. Putin will not have that access to those drones anymore. Can Russia retool its own industry to manufacture them? Perhaps, but how quickly is the question. It will definitely have an impact on Mr. Putin's ventures in the Ukraine.
Jacob, last question, kind of, we know that desalination costs a lot of money and it takes actual investment by government to actually make it so that you have water. Israel is a perfect example of this. For the years, Iran has given billions of dollars for organizations to go against Israel. Do you think that what we're seeing here is kind of possibly a judgment? Rather than spending money on infrastructure for their people, they've been spending it to kill Jews. Do you think that possibly has part of it?
Absolutely, but look at the reality. The Israeli Water Authority, American multinationals were doing research and development, desalination in Israel, particularly companies like Motorola. And then there was academic research at Bar-Ilan University in Israel. Between Israel and some of their American collaborators, Israel made desalination and water recycling more profitable or less expensive than it was. Mr. Netanyahu has already pointed out to the Iranians depose the regime, and we will help you get water. Israel has by far the best desalination and water recycling technology in the Middle East. It is world class, world class.
Yeah.
It's better than most other countries have. Maybe the United States in the Southwest, but that would be it. And a lot of the American technology was developed in Israel in collaboration with Israeli water engineers and scientists. The aquifer system has been depleted. So it's not just the lakes and dams and reservoirs, it's the aquifer system, which is causing topical damage to agricultural land. It has caused Lake Irma to basically evaporate, and it is saturated with salt dust that's blowing into the cities, particularly Iran, and causing respiratory disease on a large scale. It is a complete mess. By spending money on trying to destroy Israel and supporting terror, instead of investing in the kind of infrastructure they would need to keep themselves inadequate supply of water, they did the opposite. The mismanagement of engineering projects for waters, dam construction, and so forth, which was also riddled with corruption by the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, again, the mafia, has done a tremendous damage. At the same time, Israel has solved its water problem. They are reaping what they sowed. They're absolutely reaping what they sowed. It is the secular Iranians who realized that they would benefit from making peace with Israel. And they're calling for the Shah's son, Pahlavi, to come back.
Yeah.
It's going to be very interesting to see what the outcome of this will be. But Iran is reaping what it sowed. We see Iran is the quintessential example of the death fundamentalist Islam brings. Economically, politically, it is a national suicide. This is the fruit of Islam. It's fundamentalist Islam in its Shia version. The Gulf states with low populations and major oil and natural gas reserves like Qatar, they have a low enough population and enough oil and natural gas that they can buy their way out of these problems short to medium term. And I consider Qatar to be every bit as dangerous and evil.
Yeah.
It is the epicenter of the Muslim Brotherhood. And Mr. Trump is very foolish trusting and doing business with Qatar. Be that as it may, Qatar can buy its way out of it. The Emirates can buy their way out of it. Iran cannot.
Let me ask you a question, Elon, real quick. So, spiritually speaking, what, as far as Bible allusion, does drought and water shortages usually indicate the judgment of God?
I wouldn't automatically equate them, but yeah, you can see that it is one of the Deuteronomy 28, for example, and all some of the minor prophets do show that in some cases, yes, it is it can be a direct judgment from the Lord. He can withhold the rain. Of course, you remember during the reign of Ahab, Elijah was given authority to close the heavens. And, so it can be, yes, but not. I wouldn't automatically always equate a drought with a direct judgment. I mean, because, of course, we don't always have specific revelation from the Lord as to whether it is or not. But we're also living in a fallen creation where things go wrong because creation is under a curse as well. So, so there's two elements to it. But I would kind of think with something like Iran, where you've got wicked leaders who are given over to trying to destroy Israel, although they're just poking God in the eye in a sense. That they're in a situation like that, I would say largely, very probably yes. it is a judgment, and I think also Britain as well to some extent. You've got a very hostile, evil government. It's very hostile to the things of God and very hostile
Yes.
towards Israel. And I don't think the Lord will just stand idly by in those cases. He will intervene, with discipline.
Yes. Judgment.
Thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next story. This was brought up by you, Elon. You sent me these crazy videos of New Year's in Germany.
Oh
Well,
yeah,
so apparently the new European tradition to ringing in the New Year's is dodging explosives and fireworks set in the streets, not to go up in the air, but to fire horizontally at other people. 400 injured
yeah.
in Berlin alone, yet silence from the leadership of Germany, as if nothing happened. 400 people injured. At this point, can we even call it an isolated incident when it becomes a pattern? The police unions are using language, but they're using languages about Islamophobia rather than actually what's going on. Why is there this breakdown in Germany, a society known for order, in your opinion, Jacob?
Well, you reap what you sow. A lot of the blame of this, of course, rests with Angela Merkel. She was a reckless, irresponsible. You couldn't imagine somebody who would have a better plan to destroy Germany and destroy the German economy and to wreak havoc in German society than Angela Merkel. She was a horrible figure. What she did to Germany, opening the doors to Islamic immigration, even encouraging it. It no sooner happened when you had Muslims attacking German women in the streets at public festivals and things like this, and Christmas celebrations. When you let barbarians into your country, they will behave like barbarians. The people who they let in, barbarians. These were heathen savages. These are Islamists. They hate the West. They only come to get what they can out of the West because they see it as jihad. They see it as demitude, that the infidel has to support them because they're Muslims, and the infidel are their slaves or their servants. They have no love or respect for Western pluralism or values. And Merkel just sold her country straight down the river. I would lay the blame for things like this at the feet of Angela Merkel. But also the Christian Democrats, the pseudo-conservative German equivalent of rhinos. They have taken the German patriots, alternative for Germany, and branded them as Nazis and racist extremists, which is, of course, a complete and utter lie. The real Nazis are the Islamo-Nazis, the Islamo-fascists. It is not people trying to defend their country from the Islamo-fascists, but you mislabel the patriots as the Nazis because they want to defend the country from the Nazis, whom Merkel has brought in and whom the pseudo-conservative Christian Democrats, the rhinos of Germany, have done nothing about, much the same as the Bush-Cheney dynasty pandered to the Saudi Arabians before, during, and after September 11th. The rhinos. That's what the Bush did, and that's what the Christian Democrats are doing in Germany. These people behave like barbarian savages. Now, I'm not saying that all Muslims are barbarian savages, but the majority of the immigrants who come to Western countries very much are barbarian savages.
Davey, I want to ask you a question because, again, this kind of is a global issue. Right now, it's being treated that if you acknowledge the breakdown, it's treated as extremism and ignores the actual responsibility of the officials to provide safety. is something we just had the Bondi attack. It's very, very similar issues of immigration, and then on top of that, the violence that it brings. Why is it to be a consensus amongst not only countries in Europe, but now internationally that if you flag it, you're an extremist? In Australia, why is that? Is that the norm as well?
Yes. Unfortunately, it's still the norm. It's become the norm here, I should say, too. It's kind of like I was thinking about the fireworks incidents. You were talking about, in Germany. I did see a little bit of the mainstream news here. There were a couple of incidents here, a lot more injuries from illegal fireworks use here. I think the big one here in Melbourne was the machete attacks that happened on New Year's Eve or New Year's morning, I should say. So Jacinta Allen's machete ban worked really well too. But the problem is, look, these things are going to keep going on and keep going on. We had calls, I think it was New Year's Day, they need to crack down more on the machetes, they need to crack down more on the fireworks and all the rest of it, but they'll never, ever address the ideology behind what's going on, whether it's the anti-Semitism, the Bondi incident, whether it's machete attacks, they will never actually address the ideology behind it. Yeah. And as soon as anyone points it out, no, they're branded as Islamophobia, they're still going to push that narrative no matter what. It's crazy. I really hope we end up getting a royal commission here into what happened at Bondi. Hell, they keep saying, no, we don't need to do it, and to do one would be Islamophobic and all the rest of it. It's just, it's insane. It really is insane.
Yeah.
You compare actually what's going on in Iran with what's going on in the West. You mentioned they were actually holding up, Israeli and US flags and all the rest of it, where here in the West, they're kind of like they're burning our country's flags and stuff like that.
Yep.
What a world we live in. Well, these things are going to keep going on and continuing on until people actually call out the ideology for what it is. But that's not going to happen with the corrupt leaders and the corrupt media we've got at present, I'm afraid.
I think I see a pattern here, Davey. They're going to outlaw machetes because of the Islamists. Then, because they don't have the machetes, there's going to be overgrown areas that are catch on fire. And then they're going to blame it on climate change so that, you have that full circle of left-wing thought.
Well, the machete bans worked really well. It was kind of like they were praising themselves up on the back, late last year, how wonderful the machete ban, how well it worked and all the rest of it. And then we have, first thing in the new year, we have machete attacks. Now, I know for a fact, there was down near Geelong where they had the bins for people to turn in your machetes, put in their machetes. When they'd emptied that bin out, there was only one machete in that bin. And I actually know the person who put that machete in there. So, and, it was kind of, the person who put it in didn't need to hand it in. The people the criminals are never going to hand that stuff in. This sort of stuff doesn't work, ban the car, ban the gun, guns kill people, cars kill people. So you're going to ban cars too, it's the person behind the gun. It's the person driving the car. It's the person behind the machete. You've got to address the ideology. Otherwise, things are never going to change.
If you would have asked me who is the person most responsible for the Bondi attacks, I would say two words: Penny Wong.
Yeah. Well, One thing, Jacob, I'll give her a little bit more credit. I totally agree with you, but I'll give her a little bit more credit than Anthony Albanese, because at least
Okay.
she wasn't repentant. She wasn't repentant, but she did come out on national TV and basically said that she was sorry for what happened. And that was she went into kind of like hiding for a couple of weeks. She did visit the site once she got a kind of I'll say it this way, and I don't mean to offend anyone this way, but this is how it comes. She kind of got she went accompanied with a Holocaust survivor, some old guy in his 90s that she got. But she did that for optics. I believe she did that for optics. I don't think she did that out of anything genuine or sincere. But she's actually done more than Anthony Albanese. So I know what you're saying. I'm totally with you. But I would put Anthony Albanese higher up on the list than I would Penny Wong.
Okay.
At least she said she was sorry.
Okay, well, you being an Australian, I'll defer to you and your better judgments.
Kind of following what we're talking about here, I'm going to read a headline that is very disturbing. That, again, thank you so much, Elon, for sharing this. This is from the BBC. I'm gonna read it like this: 17-year-old Afghan quote unquote boys rape a 15-year-old quote unquote woman. Do you think there might be a little bit of objective bias in that statement, Elon?
This is yes, I remember this one. Yes, because they describe the 15-year-old girl as a woman, as if she were fully grown. Yes, and the 17-year-old youths, or men actually, described as boys. So that's select. So of course, both these terms are technically plausible, and you could say technically true, but it's selective language in order to make the rapists appear less responsible for their crimes. So
Yes.
And it's almost when you coin a 15-year-old girl a woman, it's like she had some kind of shall we say, not even authority, but maturity that kept her from being the victim. It makes it look like she's not the victim.
Yeah,
which is
that's
disgusting.
Exactly what it's trying to do, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, obviously that young woman, or young lady, or young girl was also below the legal age of consent as well. So so she would not be considered to be treated as an adult.
Jacob, how can people? I mean, I do know it's like calling evil good and good evil, but how can a news organization like the BBC, the British Broadcasting, say such a vile thing to paint the victim as a woman, and then the perpetrators, the scum,
Yes,
as little boys? As if she was a school teacher taking advantage of schoolboys.
You know how many Muslims work in news management at the BBC?
No.
That is part of the explanation. I was called the BBC bias, blasphemy, and cowardice. When they had the so-called Jerry Springer opera, as they called it, and broadcast it, they were patting each other on the back and congratulating each other for their courage in standing for artistic freedom and expression against traditional Judeo-Christian values or whatever. They would, with Jesus Christ and his gay lover on the BBC, they would not dare do that about Muhammad and his homosexual lover, only about Christianity. The BBC is completely hypocritical It's run by hypocrites, cowards, and liars. There's no BBC News. BBC News is just like MS Now. No one's watching. It's just like CNN. It's just like any other. It's like the Guardian newspaper. It's like what you see happening on the Young Turks, things of that nature. It is all wokeified nonsense. You cannot call it a news agency. I wish the BBC nothing but bad. But what is really disturbing is if you want to watch television or even have internet in England, you must buy a rather expensive annual license to support the BBC. You are forced to support their bias, their blasphemy, their cowardice.
Yeah.
They have put on TV shows about homosexuality and perverted sex using vulgar four-letter word language. They were not even using real terminology for the sexual acts they were describing. They were using vulgar terminology. And people are forced to pay for this. The BBC is evil. Evil. May God raise his hand against it.
Well, they are losing viewership, Jacob. People are trying to they're trying to suspend their TV licenses. However, the BBC is making it hard for people to do that. So if you want to cancel your TV license, the BBC is doing everything they can to prevent you from doing that by delaying the process, dragging it out. It's quite interesting.
Just a question, because I'm from the United States. I don't understand. What is the actual punishment for not buying a license in Great Britain? Do I go to jail? Do I go to the Tower?
Hundreds of dollars to fine. It can be £400 or £500.
Wow, that seems like a steep penalty for not paying a bill.
Well, it could be $700-800 in fines.
That's crazy. That's a license to steal.
That's what it is.
Wow. Well, go ahead.
All countries claiming to be democracies are not really democratic in some areas. In the United States, you have the abuse of eminent domain and you have civil forfeiture. We're just legalizing police corruption. That's civil forfeiture. Legalizes police corruption and theft. Yeah. Okay. In the United States, something that should be completely banned. Okay. In Britain, it's the BBC.
This kind of feeds into our next story. This story didn't break because a journalist from a major organization like the BBC or CNN, this actually happened because a YouTuber by the name of Nick Shirley actually left his office, his home, and went and started to investigate the Somalian daycares or the leering centers, as they were spelled as far as their sign had said. Instead of learning, it was leering centers. Millions of dollars. Multiple people are now being investigated, and now Tim Walz and some of the actual Minnesota government is being called to hearings. Jacob, no one in the mainstream media wanted to touch this. We're seeing YouTubers having more investigative journalism than the mainstream media. What's going on here?
Well, again, mainstream media is fake news. It's just propaganda. It editorializes the news along the lines of its own biases. Everyone knows that. It's just fake news. There is no such thing as network news or CNN or MSNBC or MSNOW. These things, these are not news outlets. They're simply propaganda machines for the woke agenda and the left wing of the Democratic Party. That's what they are. That's all they are. There's an alternative media. Now, what the government is trying to do, what the establishment is trying to do, particularly the Biden administration, is go to people like Zuckerberg and force them to engage in censorship. They've tried to take over the social media and the new media the way they control the mainstream media, because the mainstream media was being challenged by the alternative social media. Fortunately, whether you like them or not, X and Elon Musk, other people will come along and then challenge, the power of social media with an alternative social media. Ultimately, this may come to the dark web. Ultimately, it may come to the dark web. What is now the dark web, something used by child pornographers and things of that nature, may simply become the only free press that exists eventually. I could actually see how that could happen. But the change in technology has scared the mainstream media. And the establishment, the government, want the rhinos and the Democrats want to control the alternative media. But that is very difficult to lasso the internet. Very, very difficult to lasso the internet. The governments of China and Saudi Arabia have both tried to do it, and they've not been able to completely succeed. Much less are they going to succeed in the West. So mainstream media has seen its day. Just look at CNN. Look at how much a 40% decline in viewership. MSNBC turned to MSNOW. Look at how they've dissipated into nothing. They don't really matter anymore. There's also a generational factor. Young people, Generation X, Generation Z, they don't even watch television anymore, many of them. They don't even watch it. It's something that's on its way out, and it is trying to defend what territory it has left. The establishment, meanwhile, is anxious to control the new mediums. There is a battle. What I am for, and what I've always been for, is this. Barack Obama ripped off the American taxpayer and the American people when he took the internet and gave it over to the control of the United Nations. Essentially, the American taxpayer paid for the development of internet. It belonged to them. No one person owns it. No one person can control it. What I'm in favor of is making it a public utility. Making these, if you want to access the internet, Alphabet and all of these companies, Facebook and so forth, you are a public utility, and you will be governed like a public utility, meaning the First Amendment applies. The First Amendment applies. The networks did not own the airwaves, the public did. So too, the internet is not owned by Zuckerberg or by Google. It's owned by the public. It needs to be a situation where laws are enacted making these internet companies into public utilities who are regulated the way all other public utilities, be it telecommunications, energy. It's another public utility, and it needs to be regulated accordingly, where public access will be protected by First Amendment rights.
Jacob, I guess my follow-up question to you would be, given what we've seen with the taxpayer money going to these daycare centers without any type of oversight, literally transferring that money and then it going abroad and then also enriching enriching some of the Somalian communities. Other than low-level people, is there any accountability going to happen? Or is this just more of the same? Business as usual?
What they will yell, of course, is what the right used to yell, states' rights. Now states' rights have become the domain of the left to prevent the federal government from doing anything about it. But the fact is, some of that money that is being stolen by the Somali community and funneled back to Somalia is winding up in the coffers of Islamic terror, specifically El Shahab. They're funding terror. They're taking taxpayer money and giving it to Islamic terror, the way that Barack Obama and Joe Biden and the state government of Minnesota is doing the same thing with El Shahab. They're funding radical Islamic terror. There is a big, big lie, a double-barrel lie that is told by the mainstream media and by the left-wing politicians and people like Tampon Tim. They say two things. One, it is racism. And two, it is religious discrimination. As for the charge of racism, it is Black African Christians who are the victims of El Shahab being funded from the United States. Race has nothing to do with it. There was one filthy lying affirmative action Afro-American left-wing professor who actually attacked Donald Trump for military intervention on behalf of the persecuted Christians in Nigeria, saying it was racist because he was bombing Muslims who were Black, ignoring the fact that he was saving the lives of Christians who were Black. That is how perverted and twisted the academic establishment and the mainstream media actually are. So that is the first lie, that it's racist. Race has nothing to do with it. The victims are of the same color and ethnicity. Secondly, religious freedom. No. Christianity is a religion. Judaism, Talmudic Judaism, Rabbinism, call it what you will, is a religion. Buddhism is a religion, or at least a philosophy, a quasi-religious philosophy. Hinduism is a religion. Sikhism is a religion. Islam is not a religion. Islam makes no distinction between religion, Sharia law, and politics. There is no distinction. It is a political philosophy, and it is a legal system that teaches others have to acquiesce to it, including the infidel. It is not about Muslims having religious freedom. What they want to do is enforce Sharia. They have made Muslims who immigrate to the United States make immigration to the United States and obtain citizenship on a false pretense. They lie, profess loyalty to the Constitution, when in fact their religion is incompatible with the Constitution, because it's not a religion. It's a religion that is united with a political and legal philosophy. You cannot believe in Sharia and believe in the United States Constitution. Orthodox Jews can keep the halacha separate from the Constitution. Okay? Jews can do that. Roman Catholics can even do that with their canon law. A Muslim cannot. You cannot be a Muslim and an American if you are an observant Muslim who believes in Sharia, and the religion requires you believe in it. Additionally, it is a hate-based terrorist murder religion. The last day will not come until a tree says, there's a Jew hiding in the back of me, come and kill him. That is in the Quran. The Quran teaches Muslims to murder Jews. That's exactly what it says.
Yeah.
How can you allow such savage, demonized barbarians to come into your country? Ask George Bush, ask Barack Obama, ask Joe Biden. It is not about religious discrimination against somebody's religion. Islam is not a religion in the sense of Christianity or Judaism. It is a political, legal philosophy riding on the back of religion that is incompatible with democratic values and antithetical to the United States Constitution, to which these barbarians falsely profess a loyalty and an acceptance to obtain citizenship. They need to be massively deported, not because of their religion, but because of what their religion teaches. They're anti-constitutionalist and anti-American by nature. They need to be denationalized and deported. They have immigrated to the United States on a false pretense. It is not about religious freedom, except the religious freedom to deprive others of. And it is not about race. The biggest victims are Arab Christians, African Christians, who are being genocidally slaughtered by Islam in the Congo, in Nigeria, and in Sudan, and in the Horn of Africa.
Yeah.
But the media lies, left-wing politicians like Tampon Tim lie, and the academic establishment lies. If these people couldn't lie, they'd have nothing to say. Islam is an enemy of Western civilization. It is incompatible with our values of tolerance, pluralism, and democracy.
Yeah.
Real quick, from an outside perspective, Elon, when we look at this, it's an examination of, it seems that the American government, for some reason, will reward people who know how to fill out certain forms for grants, certain forms for assistance. But when it comes to actually giving the money, they will not take into consideration the reality of the services being provided. That's why you can go into one of these daycares and you'll find the facility, you'll find the place. It'll be, have some nice little pictures drawn on the wall, some ABCs, but there's no kids in it. Elon, what is the, I guess my question is, what is the government's actual benefit to giving the money to these organizations? What is certainly there must be something that the government is gaining from doing this.
Well, what I've read about this Somali fraud scandal, it seems to be more like it's certain people within the government, not the government as an entity, and that seem to be benefiting from this. And most of them, of course, appear to be Democrats. Not saying that there aren't some bent Republicans as well, but I'm sure there are. But it seems to be it's like an industry. It's like having a whole department or whole wing, a whole branch of the government entirely devoted to corruption. And people are just enriching themselves off it. I mean, I couldn't believe how much it was. It was estimated that something like 1.5 trillion of the annual government spending was completely consumed by corruption, fraud on a scale, on an unprecedented scale. Some people say that you could probably abolish income tax if you did away with corruption. I mean, that's just absolutely mind blowing.
That's a sad statement that you would have.
It's terrifying, actually.
It is. It's a scale that is definitely not weighted equally.
It really is, yeah. I can't. I mean, I can't imagine $1 trillion. I mean, I can see you can draw the numbers on paper, but you can't imagine how much that would. That's probably more than the GDP of many
Yes.
African states combined.
Yep.
It's just a massive amount.
To your point, now I think we truly can understand why a certain portion of the government was very adamant that the USAID was not to be touched or investigated. When you can hide things like this, it is corruption on a scale just absolutely unbeknown to the regular populace.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure it's the same in the EU as well. Well, maybe not to the same amount of money, but the EU and also in Britain, I'm sure there are whole arms of the government or whole sectors of it that are riddled with the same kind of corruption.
Yes.
I'm sure Sadiq Khan in London will be one of them. I'm sure. It's the deep state.
Correct.
Pointed question to you, Jacob, and this is I'm afraid you're going to answer this, and it's going to depress me further. Is there any chance that people are going to wake up and actually really question what they've been voting for in the past, as far as Democrats and left-wing pundits?
As far as Democrats and left-wing pundits, no. They're only interested in virtue signaling as they see it and to prove how liberal and tolerant they are because they're stupid, self-destructive people. They're self-hating Jews. Absolutely not. I have no faith in these people as any kind of a collective group. Certain individuals may come to their senses, but as a group or as a voting bloc, no, absolutely not. My concern has become with two other groups of people. One are the Jews of America and certain other countries, particularly America. Like a third of the Jews in New York voted for Mamdani. They vote, you may as well vote for Adolf Hitler if you vote for an anti-Israel Islamist, communist. But they did it. They are like Menelaus in the story of Hanukkah. The self-hating Jews betray their own people. The other is you've got vultures, people who've always been vultures, but then showed their true color. I speak certainly of Candace Owen, who converted to Catholicism and went into anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, a crazy woman, deranged. But then you've got Tucker Carlson. Look who he interviews. The neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes, Vladimir Putin, that Daryl Cooper.
Yeah.
Look what he is. I did not agree with Fox News firing Tucker Carlson. Now I realize in retrospect, mea culpa, they were right to get rid of Tucker Carlson. I wish we could all get rid of Tucker. That man should not exist. He's an evil man. He gives platforms to neo-Nazis, to Putin, to Daryl Cooper. I mean,
and parades himself like a Christian.
Yeah. I'm concerned. And these people come from supposedly the right. Thankfully, we're getting rid of Marjorie Taylor Greene, another hooplehead. She may say true things, but she says outrageously stupid things. She's another one. And even Megyn Kelly began playing footsies with this kind of nonsense. I saw Taylor Greene saying Why should the United States give $3.8 billion a year to Israel in military aid when they have a high-tech economy of their own? Okay. Who gets more American military aid? Does America spend more to defend Germany or Israel? Does America spend more to defend South Korea or Israel? Actually, they're equal. America spends $5.3 billion to defend Japan. Yet they pick on Israel. Well, there's a big difference between Israel and the others. One, Israel has to spend that money in the United States.
Yes,
it has to
that's right.
Go back and buy the weapon systems from McDonnell Douglas, from Raytheon, etc. So the money is being repatriated to the United States. That is not true of the cost of keeping boots on the ground in Japan and Korea and Germany. That money does not come back to the United States. Secondly, Israel is not asking America to commit troops to put boots on the ground the way Germany and the way South Korea and Japan do. There's no American lives at stake the way they are in these other countries. Israel does not ask for that. Thirdly, the intelligence cooperation and the joint technological development of weapon systems helps give America a competitive edge. I remember before the Iron Curtain came down, I remember what was happening in Israel. Every time American F-15s, American supplied F-15s flown by Israeli pilots, got into a dogfight, aerial air combat against Russian MiGs over Syria or Lebanon. The pilots were debriefed. The Israeli pilots were debriefed by McDonnell Douglas, avionic engineers, by the U.S. Army and the U.S. Navy. They were, U.S. Air Force and U.S. Navy. They were debriefed by American military personnel and by American arms manufacturers. That is how the United States, in large part, remained competitive and kept the jump on Soviet military hardware. They used Israel as a proxy weapons lab to combat test these weapon systems, these fighter aircraft, etc., using Israel to do it. It's always been to America's advantage to supply Israel. There's other countries that are on the American defense gravy train that America doesn't get much. In fact, from some of them, we get nothing. But you have an ignorant woman with a big mouth and a small brain like Taylor Greene. Doesn't know what she's talking about. Pouring out this rhetoric without even knowing what she's talking about. Why does the United States spend that kind of money in NATO, in Germany, or Japan, or South Korea? Why? No, we've got to single out Israel. Oh, Lord. At least the money is coming back to the United States. At least it's being spent.
Yeah, that's right.
Here. And at least we get technological advantages from the cooperation with the Israelis and intelligence cooperation with the Israelis. At least we're getting something forward. And we're not putting boots on the ground. There's American boots on the ground in Korea, in Germany, in Japan, but there's no American boots on the ground in Israel. But the media tells
Yaakov, I mean, when you think about it, actually, probably more money is being wasted on Somalis in Minnesota than is actually,
Sure. But this is the kind of scum you have when you have pseudo-conservatives. It's not just the rhinos. It's people who appear to be real conservatives. But Candace Owen is not a conservative. When that woman converted to Roman Catholicism, she threw her brain out the window, it seems. And Marjorie Taylor Greene, she didn't throw her brain out the window. She didn't have much of a brain to begin with. And Tucker Carlson, That man is an absolute disgrace, giving platform to neo-Nazis and to Putin and to Cooper. He is a disgrace. Fortunately, Fox fired him. People should just boycott him and ignore him.
Absolutely. We're going to move on to our next story. A few days ago, a major blackout in Moscow. Authorities and social media report indicate hundreds of thousands of residents were left without electricity and mobile communication for hours, with entire residential districts in darkness and emergency generators deployed. Locals officials cited a substation fire, while Moscow simultaneously blamed an enemy drone attack, highlighting a familiar fog between infrastructure failure and wartime narrative. According to Sergei Sabanyan, dozens of drones were intercepted, some in the Moscow region itself, forcing the airport to close. Jacob, let's talk a little bit. The war is still going on, as far as we know, and it's no longer up front in the news. It's no longer getting the headlines. But for Moscow to be hit by a drone attack and causing this kind of infrastructure damage, this is a new development, quite a development, actually.
Yeah.
You can close Cherbatov Airport in Moscow. I've been to Cherbatov Airport. And Putin claims one of his own homes were hit. So he claims. It's disputed. But that is his claim. The fact of the matter is, Putin thought he could have won this war and take down Ukraine within a matter of days. Here he is 3 years later. And it's just a stalemate. It is a humiliation for Russia. Last year, 2025, 100,000 Russian casualties. 100,000. Now, I don't agree with Mr. Trump. I do think that Putin should be given an ultimatum, and we will give Tomahawk missiles to the Ukrainians if Mr. Trump does not withdraw from Ukraine. I would take a harder line against Ukraine than Mr. Trump is. Not that I like Mr. Zelensky, I don't. But there is a problem. Donald Trump has been he hasn't been soft with Putin, but he needs to reframe some of his strategy. Let's understand the thinking of Mr. Trump. This is his thinking. His thinking, as best I can gauge it, is this. The Soviet Union is a nuclear power and has more nuclear warheads than any other country. You don't want to go to the game of nuclear brinkmanship like happened in the Cuban Missile Crisis. Nobody wants to go back to that. Yeah. So how do you defeat Mr. Putin and the Russians? You defeat them the way you defeated them the last time. How did Mrs. Thatcher and the Americans defeat the Soviet Empire? How did they bring about the collapse of the Warsaw Pact, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and the collapse of the CIS, the Confederation of Independent States? How did they bring about this destruction? By economic warfare. Mr. Trump uses sanctions. He uses this, including Russia, from the SWIFT banking system. He uses oil embargoes, things of this nature, and he increases oil and domestic oil and natural gas production in the United States to drive down the price of oil. So Mr. Putin is having problems selling the oil, and he's getting a lower and lower price for it. Mr. Trump's thinking is, we beat them the same way we beat them the last time. Don't go to nuclear brinkmanship. Bring them down economically so they can't fund their war machine. Mr. Zelensky realizes this because he has hyper targeted Russian oil refining capacity and Russian oil production. That is also economic warfare, or a combination of economic and military warfare. Mr. Trump does not want to go back to the edge of the abyss in a potential nuclear confrontation. He prefers to bring Putin down economically. He's not soft on Putin. He simply has what he considers to be a better and safer strategy for doing it. This is not to say the United States has not been supplying arms and money to the Ukrainians. It's provided more than any other European country. It's provided more than any European country. These people who are complaining the United States is not doing enough or he's pandering to Putin, no European country has given as much aid or military aid to the Ukraine as the United States. But Mr. Putin realizes the best strategy is the way America beat them the last time. You bankrupt them. That is what is happening.
Yeah.
Elon, let me ask you a question. Can the negotiations that are currently underway coexist with this kind of drone warfare that we're seeing? Is it a break of trust to deploy such warfare at a time when you're trying to actually negotiate a peace?
Well, I don't. Maybe in a sense, the the ongoing warfare is attempting to get a bit of extra leverage in the negotiations. I mean, is there an official ceasefire or something? I don't think there is. Is there? I've
I
not
think
seen anything on that.
there are, I believe there are negotiations supposedly back channel and officially, but no, there is no
Right.
official.
So the war is still going on then. So you squeeze the enemy in every possible way in order to maximize your gain at the negotiating table, don't you? That's really what that's really what's going on then, isn't it?
Thank you,
You're
Davey.
in,
Oh,
sorry?
sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, no, carry on, Jay. It's all right. No, just it was a half-formed thought there. Just
Thank you, Davey. Real quick, let me ask you a question here. Now that we've seen this attack on Moscow, the capital of Russia, what do you think Vladimir Putin is probably planning as a retaliation, if he is at all? What does this mean for Kiev?
Oh, gosh, actually, interesting question. Well, look, personally, I think things are only going to continue to escalate. All the negotiations, the talks of peace, I don't think they're going to really amount to much. It's kind of like, especially you're dealing with a bunch of people too who really don't want peace too. So it's kind of like, when you were talking with Elon before, it was kind of like it seems to be a pattern these days. Though now it's kind of like the first image that was coming to my mind was kind of like Hamas. Every time there's a peace or a ceasefire, Hamas always breaks it. Hamas always does something to attack and retaliate. When you got a lot of actors like this, their word really means nothing, and they're all basically acting in the character of Antichrist. So it's kind of like their word means nothing, and I think it's all kind of a reflection and a bit of a picture on the ultimate one who's going to come and break the covenant he's going to enforce. I think all those kind of things are reflections on that. We're seeing little microcosms of it happening everywhere, where their word means nothing, and and yet people buy into it all the time, and then it's kind of like, um, I'm not too sure what Putin's response is going to be, but I do believe there will be a response. I really don't think this is going to end anytime soon, put it that way.
What he's likely to do is what he's always done. He's going to have increased drone, more spectacular, massive drone and missile attacks on Kiev and possibly Odessa, targeting civilians, weapons of terror. The question, of course, is with Iran being in the state it's in, and with what's happened in Azerbaijan and Armenia, how long will he have access to that kind of drone armamentation, since they're coming from Iran?
Jacob, Jacob, let me ask you a question, because this is actually something that was brought up by our viewers. I agree with you. I believe that Trump is treating this as an economic war, for sure. But given the United States,
he's a businessman. That's how he fights.
I understand that, but given that the U.S. is now $37 trillion in debt, our economy is not the best. Inflation is out of control. This economic warfare is having a serious actual impact on the United States economy as well as the Western and European powers. So how long can we sustain this?
The United States economy is, in terms of GDP, that's doing well. The problem is the deficits. The deficits is the problem.
Yeah.
And this has been the biggest failure of Mr. Trump in both his first and second administration, the failure to control the growing deficit. This is one of the things I don't like about him. What you're seeing is the following. The dollar is weakening. And if Mr. Trump gets rid of Powell from the Fed, interest rates will be cut further. Now, that makes imports more expensive. It makes exports more cheaper. It may help the balance of trade somewhat, but it's not going to help the deficit. And if there are imports that you cannot produce domestically, at least in the short term, that itself has an inflationary effect. It drives up prices of vital imports that you must import because the dollar has become so weak. It is the weakening dollar that troubles me. If the Russian ruble, the South African rand, the euro, if all of these other currencies were not weak themselves, I could see a risk to the dollar as the world currency reserve. It is not the strength of the American economy. It is the weakness of the other major economies that is keeping the dollar in the position that it's in. Mr. Trump is juggling. He needs to play a much better game than he's been playing. These deficits must be addressed, and he's not doing the things that he needs to address them. For one thing, there's over $3 trillion in Chinese debt that China owes the United States, plus interest, that Mr. Trump should just repay the American T-bills held by China with the debt China owes the United States. Here, we'll pay our debt off with the debt you owe. Now, that would take it down by $3 trillion in itself. Now, it's frightening when $3 trillion is only a small percentage of the overall debt.
That's my point.
Something has got to be done. It's not being done. Again, would I rather have Mr. Trump than Mr. Biden or Bimbo Harris or whatever? Well, of course I would. But am I content that he's going in the right direction on all fronts? No, I am absolutely not. He's wrong about Qatar. He's wrong about the deficit, and he's wrong about not balancing the impact of interest rates, prime rates, with the need to control
Yeah.
and the value of the dollar. He's he's doing some things right,
Yeah.
but he's not addressing the main problem. The only thing that's to America's advantage is China's in trouble. Germany's in trouble. France is in trouble. Russia's certainly in trouble. Now India is in trouble. South Africa is certainly in trouble. Canada is in trouble. It's just that the United States is not alone in its mess. That's the only thing. It's not being handled correctly. He's messing up with Qatar. He's messing up with the deficits. He really is.
I would agree. And I think our earlier story is also showing a systematic pattern of how the economy is being destroyed. How can you seriously even talk about deficits and economic warfare when your own government is basically causing the shortfalls with the deficit? When you're sending money to Al-Shabaab, a terrorist organization, using taxpayer money and USAID, it's like you're hemorrhaging the money you could use to pay down the deficit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Once you reach the point where you're paying more to service interest on debt than you are defense and entitlement programs, you got to put on the brakes. And Mr. Trump has not put on the brakes. Yes, the Democrats would have been worse. The Democrats would have been worse. But a lesser of two evils is an evil no less.
Jacob, I'm seeing a kind of a pattern here as far as we're at the point where it looks to me where the officials, like the mandarins, are basically taking the treasures of the dynasty and using them for themselves. That's why you have systemic corruption like you do. The people and the bureaucrats in charge are looting the treasury for themselves because they can see the writing on the wall.
You use the term loot. I remember during the Cold War, at the time of Star Wars, when Ronald Reagan was increasing defense spending but cutting taxes at the same time. He was buying aircraft carriers on credit cards. One of the things Ronald Reagan did was loot Social Security. He literally looted Social Security. And people thought he was a conservative, which he was not a fiscal conservative. Again, if you want to say the Democrats would be worse, I would agree. I would agree. But that does not make Republicans good. It just means the alternative is worse.
Absolutely.
The American economy is not in good shape, despite the fact that it has a reasonably high GDP. The deficits and the devaluation of the dollar are bad. The fact that Germany and France and Canada and China are all in decline, okay, it makes the decline relative, but it's still the bottom line. You're in decline.
Yeah.
With that, I think we're going to go ahead and go to backstage. We want to thank everyone for watching. We have quite a few questions, I believe, right, Davey? For Jacob?
Yes, yeah, we've got some good ones today.
Excellent. So please stick with us. We'll be back in a few minutes. Thank you for joining us for the regular show, and we will be back to answer all your questions. God bless. Welcome to Backstage, where we take your questions and give them to the panel, and hopefully we can come to some kind of answer for you. Today we have quite a few, so we want to thank all those that have given, and we'll start with this one. Jacob, the sexually violent stories of the angels inside Lot's house from Genesis 19, and the Levite and his concubine inside the old man's house from Judges 19 are almost identical. Is there a reason for this?
Well, yeah, it does show the demonic nature inspiring the sexual depravity has a common source, and it's demonic. Okay. So when you have this kind of sexual violence, there's definitely a demonic element that fuels sexual violence of this kind. But there is a distinction. In the account of Lot, it's obviously of a homosexual nature, while what transpires in Judges is of a heterosexual nature. Additionally, there had to be a divine judgment on the tribe of Benjamin that almost would have disappeared had God not made provision at Shiloh to replenish the tribe when the virgins of Benjamin came up in the book of Judges, chapter 21. So although there are similarities, there are certainly differences. Now, there's also a typological meaning to the woman's body being hacked up, the body being decimated. We have an actual teaching tape where we address it from some years ago, but the woman representing like the bride of Jehovah, the wife of Jehovah, the bride of Christ, being devastated by godless, backslidden sons. You know, that it has that kind of meaning as well. So there are both similarities showing the demonic commonality in what happened, but there are also very distinct differences between the two accounts. You shouldn't go too far on equating them.
Thank you very much. Jacob, I would like your opinion on the connection of Elon Musk, J.D. Vance, and Peter Thiel. I was surprised to discover that Vance had worked for Thiel and that Thiel financed his political run. Is Trump being duped here, or is he part of a deception being enacted in plain sight by these technocrat and transhumanists?
J.D. Vance, before he ran for office in Ohio, was in Silicon Valley. He comes out of Silicon Valley, and he represents Silicon Valley, not high-tech interests, but specifically Silicon Valley defense interests. There is a lot of defense contracting that goes on in Silicon Valley. We normally think of California as being liberal and all this kind of stuff. No, money talks. There's a major defense contracting goes on in Silicon Valley, and that is the world that J.D. Vance comes from. Look, I usually agree with him politically, usually, but I've always been troubled by the fact that he converted to Roman Catholicism, as I'm troubled by the fact that Candace Owen did that. Somebody like Marco Rubio is also a Roman Catholic, but he was born into it. He didn't join it. I'm more troubled by somebody. Because of my mother, I was born into Catholicism, or I had it forced on me as a kid. I can understand that and how you can come out of it and so forth when you become a believer. J.D. Vance went into Roman Catholicism. I'm quite uncomfortable with anybody who will go into a false religion. Secondly, he has made certain statements concerning Israel that I'm not exactly comfortable with. I don't think he's as pro-Israel as Mr. Trump is. He also made the statement of there are people who equate anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism. 99.9% of the time, anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism. Martin Luther King said that. Abba Eban said that. Moshe Rosen said that. And they're right. Anti-Zionism is almost always the current expression of anti-Semitism. J.D. Vance made statements to the contrary. I'm not comfortable with J.D. Vance, and if I had my way, he would not be the Republican nominee. I'd rather have Marco Rubio, or I'd rather have Ted Cruz or someone like that.
Or Ron DeSantis, even, yeah.
Yeah. Although he's probably not electable, he's not charismatic enough, even though I like him politically. So I'm not comfortable with Mr. Vance, but he does come from Silicon Valley. Mr. Thiel is also a defense contractor, a high-tech defense contractor, not in the area of hardware, but in the area of software. And of course, AI is already playing a huge role in the development of weapon systems.
Yeah.
Answer the question?
Right. Yes, thank you. Jacob, this question is back to the Somalian funds that were going to Al-Shabaab. Do you believe that perhaps some of the Somalis thought of this as a jizya on America?
Oh, they all do. They all do. They all see it as demitudes, as the infidel paying the demi. It's not just what's going to El Shahab, it's what's going to them. They see it as demitudes. They see it as jizya. Yes. And they obviously and they see it as funding jihad, courtesy of Tampon Tim.
Do you think that the government itself saw it as a jizya, paying it to them to gain political favor, gain votes?
It's not a federal government action. It was a state government action.
State government on the part of the state. Then,
first of all, Tim Walz doesn't care. He just wanted to court the Islamic vote. He doesn't care. He just doesn't care about America. He doesn't care about anything. He just doesn't care. He's a Democrat. All he cares about is retaining power. America be damned. He's a liberal Democrat. So the federal government, I think that the Biden administration probably knew and turned a blind eye. The Trump administration is aware of it and is not turning a blind eye, fortunately. Can they get Walz? That's the question. Walz needs to be removed from office. I'd like to see the man die in prison, but can they get Walz?
All right, new subject. Jacob, since immortality belongs intrinsically to God alone, how do glorified saints remain immortal in the eternal state without sharing in God's divine essence?
Well,
I'm not sure I understand the question as phrased. Can you repeat it, please?
Sure. Since immortality belongs intrinsically to God alone, how do glorified saints remain immortal in an eternal state without sharing in God's divine essence?
Well, we do. From the time somebody's born again, God puts a new spirit inside of them, and we begin taking on the divine nature within ourselves. The fruit of the Spirit is the divine nature of God in Christ. That's the fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah.
We do partake of it.
Yes.
And that's not to say this is not the little God stuff of the word faith money preachers, but God does want us to be in the image and likeness of himself and in the character of his son. Absolutely. Now, Jesus
also, you've got those verses.
Will never be God. Will never be God, and Jesus will always have the preeminence. But we are to take on his nature, yes, and his character, yes.
Yes. And it says it explicitly in Peter as well, doesn't it? Exceeding great and precious promises, whereby we partake of the divine nature. So
Correct, Peter.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good answer. Jacob, our church, Surf Coast Chapel in Geelong, is currently in the process of partnering with Christian Community Churches, Victoria and Tasmania. Do you know anything about them at all?
I know Christians in Geelong in Australia who are on the Moriel mail list. I had spoken in Geelong quite a number of years ago, but not many years, probably in some decades. I've not spoken there. But there are people on our mail list who are there. I'm not sufficiently familiar to comment about the ecclesiological situation there, but I would refer the question to Davey. Maybe Davey.
Yeah, David, do you know anything about the Christian Community Churches, Victoria and Tasmania?
I actually hadn't heard of them, but I was actually doing a bit of research during the broadcast just to see what I could find out about them. They do share similar beliefs to the Open Brethren movement, so very similar belief systems to the Open Brethren movement. They do respect the autonomy of each church to, run themselves. One of the main leaders is a guy called David. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce his surname right, but it's Rate, I think is how you say it. And he's written a couple of books. I looked up two of the books, and I really would like to read the books. Read one in particular a little bit more before I say yay or nay. But well, the one book is called The Next Wave, and he's basically he's big on missions and everything like that, which is good. But he's talking about empowering young people to help, bring in kingdom come kind of thing. So, a lot of it's to do with empowerment. I've been looking at a lot of the words, and I'm trying to think, okay, yeah, what does he actually mean with some of the terms? There could be a mix of stuff there. Good thing they do allow the churches to run autonomously, but I'll look into this a little bit more. Because I did find, look, I can read a PDF of the book online, and it's wondering how they're using it. What does he mean by the kingdom? Is it okay? I'm wondering if there's kingdom now influences there, if there's a little bit of dominionism there or not.
Yeah.
And I did check with some of their partners, especially in the mission work. I thought, oh, that sounds promising. And then I looked down, and then they've also got Open Doors there. And then Open Doors is pretty anti-Israel, but they've also got Friends of Israel as one of the partners there. So it's kind of, I think there's a bit of a mix there, what I see already.
Great. Thank you, Davey. And yeah, keep us informed. Jacob, what are your thoughts on Ray Comfort and his ministry?
I did a conference with Ray Comfort in England once. Very nice guy, very dedicated brother. I know some of his family, his Jewish family in New Zealand. I first became aware of Ray in New Zealand. He used to debate this professor of cosmology called the Wizard in the square before the cathedral that was destroyed in the earthquakes in Christchurch. That's when I first came to be aware of him. I think his recorded teaching, Hell's Best Kept Secret, is a masterpiece. I like Ray very much personally. I consider him to be a good brother, and I thank God for what he does. Now, he has had certain associations from time to time with what I would consider to be nefarious. He does not necessarily share their beliefs, but there are people like Joyce Meyer, who I consider to be a false teacher and a bad woman. I think he's had been involved with her a little bit at one point. I would like to see him exercise more discernment in some of the people he gets in bed with from time to time. but I know of nothing wrong with his own doctrine. And again, I can personally testify to his love for the Lord and for his zeal for souls. And again, if you've not heard his teaching, Hell's Best Kept Secret, I would recommend you listen to it. That is my view of Ray Comfort. Nice Jewish
Great.
boy.
Thank you so much, Jacob. This next one, wow. Jacob, what do you think of Dr. Michael Heiser?
Interesting scholar, and he says some things I agree with, but he was fundamentally off when he gets into this thing of the counsels of God. His teachings were not scripturally balanced. They were not scripturally.
Yeah.
They're just not scriptural. He deviated into things that I wish he had not. I think he gave up the ghost about 3 years ago, approximately.
Yeah,
3 years.
that's right.
2.5 to 3.5 years ago. Again, some of this stuff is interesting, but he get into speculations of things from the book of Daniel and elsewhere about the God taking counsel and things like this, and the heavenly watchers and things like this, where I think his views were not scriptural. I would not recommend him as a source of doctrinal understanding of the scriptures, but for academics, people who are interested in academic theology and who know biblical languages, he is somebody whose ideas, even though you may not agree with them, you have to take him into consideration from an academic point of view. But in terms of doctrinal theology, I would not be able to recommend him. This is not to make any judgments about his personal salvation, however. I'm only speaking about his teaching.
Second question, what has happened to Sam Shamoun?
Sam Shamoun went the way of Candace Owen and J.D. Vance. He's lost his mind. He became a Roman Catholic. Sam Shamoun is a good debater. There is no question he is a very good debater. People have accused him of sarcasm or of religious narcissism or what. I don't care what people accuse him of. He's a good debater, but he's definitely lost his way. Anybody who goes into the false gospel of Roman Catholicism with its sacramental salvation, with its auto-atonement and purgatory, with its view of the papacy and the Pope as the Holy Father, with its necromancy and prayers to the dead, with its view of Mary being a co-mediatrix, he has definitely lost his way. Now, when somebody does that, when somebody will do something as off the wall as going into Roman Catholicism, that tells me that spiritually, first of all, and doctrinally, there must have been something wrong with him all along. You don't go into Roman Catholicism, into an error, into a false apostate pseudo-Christian cult, howbeit the biggest one in the world, on a lark or on a whim. There had to be something wrong with him all along. There were those who would say that his seeming arrogance betrays the fact that there was something spiritually wrong with him. They may be right. Nonetheless, I've seen him handle Muslims, Jehovah's Witnesses, and to a degree, even unsaved rabbis. The man definitely is a good debater, but spiritually and theologically, there's something wrong with him. And there always has been. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone the way he has. It just came to the surface at some point, but it always had to be that there was something wrong with him.
Great. Thank you so much. Jacob, when we went to visit a church and found out that the women in the church are teaching the children how to pray in tongues, do we confront?
First of all, is it your church? That's the first question. Is it your church? If you're a visitor, it's something else. If it's your church, what you need to do, and I don't know if you're a male or a female, if you're a woman, you should go to your husband. He should take it up with the eldership of the church. But it is wrong. It is wrong to do that. You don't teach people how to pray in tongues. You don't teach people how to prophesy. You don't teach people how to have words of knowledge. You don't teach people how to exercise gifts of healing. You don't do that. There's no biblical basis for any of that. It is totally unscriptural. The question is whether or not it is your place to address it. One, is it your church? And two, are you a married woman? You need to go through your male covering. Your husband, your father, your older brother, or whoever, something like that. Before you go on your own, you need to first take it to your husband, if you have one. But the issue is definitely wrong and it should be confronted. Having said that, if it's going on, it may well be going on with the knowledge and approval of the elders. So the elders are in error. So you better be ready to debate them and show them from the scripture it's wrong.
Yikes.
Don't get into a gunfight. You can't win.
Jacob, could Trump be the little help in Daniel 11:34?
The little help? No. A little help? Yes. When they fall, they will receive a little help. He represents respite for the Christian and for the Jew, for Israel. The definite article? No. Someone who God uses as a little help? Yes, I believe he is. Which is not to say he's perfect.
Thank you, Jacob. This next question I think is probably centered to me. Is there a way to donate using Zelle? I don't have a credit card or PayPal. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the UK can accept Zelle, or you said Devore can accept Zelle, correct?
Yeah. Devore Truth does accept Zelle. If you go to ccodtruth.org or Bread for the Famine, the website's there. You'll find a little QR code with the Zelle code info there. But as far as I know in Montreal, US, I think it's only PayPal and Gab. Is it Gab Pay?
I think it's Gab Pay, and I think you can also directly input a credit card. We will look into that. Yeah, I'll talk to Mia and see if we can't do something. For now, if you send in a check, you don't have checks either. Yeah, we'll look into that. I can't really answer that right now at this moment, but we'll definitely look into that for you. Let's see. Jacob, during COVID, more people seemed open to the gospel. Should we prepare for similar times ahead and be ready to lead by example? 2 Timothy 1:7.
During times of crisis or adversity, be it a war, be it a pandemic, be it a natural disaster, people will tend to seek God in some way. Now, normally that's done just simply by religion or religiosity. Nonetheless, by virtue of the fact that they're seeking some kind of religious, for want of a better term, explanation, that opens an opportunity to present the gospel to them during adverse times. A good way to understand this is that C.S. Lewis wrote the screw tape letters during the Blitz when Britain and when London were being bombed. There's an openness in people when they're in dire circumstances. And I think we can safely conclude from the scripture that there will be increases in dire circumstances multiplying before the Lord comes. So the answer to your question is yes.
Great. Thank you so much. The next question. 6,000 Swedes are using implanted RFID chips in their right hand today. Positive
Yes.
news about how it is written on LinkedIn. How can sleeping Christians wake up to this? I have no public voice, the asker of the question.
We have to understand something. The mark of the beast will not be a currency. It will be a permit to engage in commerce. You will not be able to buy or sell without it. There's nothing that indicates it's a currency in itself. But there is something that indicates that it will be some kind of a subcutaneous implantation in the skin or on the skin. There are different things in the Bible that prefigure it, including it being the opposite of the Tav, the Hebrew letter Tav in Ezekiel 8 and 9. It'll be the opposite of the seal of the Lamb on the forehead. It'll be the opposite of God's mark. This is something we see developing technologically. Do I think what you see in Sweden is anything with the mark of the beast? No, it isn't. But do I see it as a technological development that points to how the mark of the beast can be implemented? Yes, absolutely. I think that that is also true of AI. I think it is true of Verichips. I think it is true of Social Security cards or NHS numbers, anything that numbers people. All of these things point to Revelation 13, ultimately, yes. And what you see happening in Sweden, actually, it began before Sweden. It began at Reading University in England, where you had implantable chips. Now, what you have to understand also is these things will be devices to facilitate nanotechnologies that will be used for good. For instance, you'll have implantations of chips that will be nanoelectric light sensors to jump across a dead synapse in the closed nerve tissue in the optical nerve to give a partial capacity to at least see light and vague images in blind people. Well, how can you argue with that? It's helping the blind to see. Or with the audio nerve with deaf people. These technologies, implantable microprocessing technologies, can be used for good. Also, to monitor insulin secretion, where you will not have to take pills or you will not have to take injections. You will simply have an implantable chip that will monitor monosodium glucose levels in blood, will monitor blood sugar levels. They'll be able to determine pancreatic function and on a microchip. And then you will have a stimulus to the pancreas to begin producing insulin. These technologies will initially be used for good, and people opposing it will be seen as standing in the way of medical science. But anything that can be used for good will ultimately be used for evil by fallen man. The problem, as always, is not the technology itself, but the technology in the hands of fallen man. But I would take note of what you see in Sweden as a step towards Revelation 13, even though it is not Revelation 13.
And with that, our questions are done for this week. We will pick up the questions next week. Before I ask Jacob to close this out, I just want to remind everyone to please pray for the Christians in Iran. With the turmoil that's going on there, you can be sure that they will be targets. And for years, they have been taking the brunt of the anger of the leadership and the government there. So keep them in prayer. They are the persecuted church. They are parts of the body and our brothers and sisters. Jacob, take it away.
I have no doubt that one of the reasons God's judgment is coming on these mullahs is because of their hatred of Israel and the Jews and their persecution of Iranian Christians. I came to be advised about a week ago, looking at our most recent statistics, except for Spain and Germany, Moriel gets more visitors from Iran than we do any country in Europe except for Spain and Germany. We have more people from Iran than from Holland, than from France, than from Italy. I'm not saying the numbers are massive, but we get more people from Iran than we do from most European countries. God is definitely working there, and the devil is obviously unhappy about it. There are places now in the Middle East, particularly Egypt and Iran, where the churches are growing by people getting saved. It's early days yet. The numbers are relatively small, but they're a lot bigger than they used to be. The tremendous moves of God we've seen in the Muslim countries of the Far East are now moving towards the Middle East, including Egypt, the world's biggest Arab country, and including Iran, the Persian country. So yes, we need to remember our brethren in Iran. They have to go through the same difficulties with the water shortages and the hyperinflation as the rest of the Iranians, plus the hatred leveled against them by the mullahs and the jihadists.
Yeah.
Heavenly Father, we bring our brethren in Iran before you. We know they've been persecuted, but we know you know every one of them. You call them by name, for they are yours. Protect them, Lord. Meet their needs through these dire circumstances of drought and food shortage and hyperinflation. Take care of these, our brethren, Lord God. Please, Lord God, intervene on their behalf in the name of Jesus. And Lord, please bless the ministry of Moriel and all of our viewers and subscribers into the new year, all of our supporters. Bless and keep every one of them, Lord God. We thank you for the work that you've called us to, and we know that we are another year closer to the return of your Son. Keep us faithful to him until that day, and make us effective in serving him and preparing the way for his return. In his wonderful name, the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. What a wonderful way to end, by praying to our God. Thank you so much for watching this week. We will see you next week. Hopefully, Marco will be back. And just till then, take care. God bless. Hello, and thank you for watching Moriel TV. There are so many things that are happening at Moriel Ministries worldwide, from the Philippines to Japan to India to Africa and back to Europe and the United States. So many of our brothers and sisters are spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to this lost world. We are so thankful for your prayers. God has been faithful and has blessed us in so many ways. If you'd like to partner with our efforts abroad and at home, please take a moment to click the link in the description and help us as the Lord leads you. Thank you very much, and God bless.